Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the next instalment of the Daily Palace podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I'm here today with Dan Tanner. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing all right. So first one of the week. So I'm going to be talking about Arsenal a lot this week. I'm going to, I think 3 times in a row, I'm going to be talking about Arsenal. Come on.
Yeah, like you say, we've got sort of familiar foes with Arsenal over the next few days. So we're meeting them tonight in the EFL Cup quarter-final, which we'll be talking about throughout most of this pod, really. And then later in the week, on Saturday evening, we're going to be playing the Gunners again at Selhurst Park, and Dan is going to be joining some of the daily Arsenal team tomorrow to relive tonight's game and look ahead to Saturday's game. And he's going to be sick to the back teeth of Arsenal fans, unless we win tonight. It could be different. Right, so today, we're going to look at some Palace team news and then some potential Arsenal threats. And then we'll finish with our score predictions for tonight's game. So Glasner in his press conference yesterday gave us some updates on the team. Adam Wharton is out now until January, which is a bit of a shame because we thought he was coming back, but he's out until the new year. And a couple of dodgy ones in that Daniel Munoz is suspended for this game after reaching his quota of yellow cards. And Eze is a slight concern after a knock against Brighton, but it looks like he might be able to make the cut. So, Dan, I just want to ask you about another Dan in Daniel Munoz. He's obviously not available for tonight, and I think he's also out of Saturday's game as well. But who do you think comes in for him? Because he's been such a central player for us recently. Scored a couple of goals. Really energetic, and there's not many players who can match what he does. So if you're Glasner, what do you do with this one?
Well, this is kind of the thing that we were talking about, like at the beginning in the off season. Like we don't have that many fullbacks, and especially ones that play kind of like the wing fullbacks like that we've been using. So the obvious choice is Nathaniel Klein because he is an out and out right back, and he has some experience doing sort of bumming down the wing and sort of getting crosses in and being sort of a bit of a attacking threat. Just, I don't think he's got the legs to do 90 minutes. I think he's only been doing sort of like substitution appearances at the moment. So, he's the out and out like for like player that would do it because the only other option was Joe Ward, who's also out injured, but basically would be the same problem. Don't think he has the legs to do what Munoz can sort of bomb up and down that wing quite as consistently. But you got on the other hand, you could use his substitution as a kind of like tactical maneuver. So like depending on what's going on, you could probably put in somebody like Schlopp or something just to put in a wild card, depending on if we're winning or losing, just to see what happens. Or to put on another attacker or another midfielder or whatever. So the options are there, but to start with, I think Nathaniel Klein is the obvious choice, and I don't see Glasner doing any of these weird positional changes as a starting lineup, but he might do as the game goes on to kind of like open up something and to try and defend a lead or whatever.
Yeah, it's a tough one because we've got cover in so many positions, except for the 2 wing backs in Mitchell and Munoz. Like no one can really do what they do. And I think Klein is probably the obvious option. So like you say, I don't think we'd be surprised if he did start tonight. But I don't think he offers the same threat that Munoz does. But then again, to be honest, we're probably not going to have loads of the ball against Arsenal. So a more defensive player might actually suit us. It'd be interesting, like you said, with Schlupp, like whether he gets a chance, because we could either move Mitchell out to the right or just play Schlupp there because he does fill in those positions. And I think he actually offers something a bit more going forward than Klein, in a sense. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It'll be be strange. Will be strange not to see Munoz because he plays like every game. So it's going to be strange not seeing him on the pitch tonight. The other one is Eze. He might be back. He's going to have a late fitness test before tonight's game. If he doesn't play, it looks perhaps like Nketia might get the nod. Do you see him coming in against his former club, Dan?
Well, if they're trying to rest Eze for the weekend game, which is a little bit more important for both us and Arsenal, I can definitely see him starting, but he'll have to definitely step it up a bit because he hasn't really lived up to the 30 million price tag that we put him on. I think it's 25 plus a couple of bonuses, whatever happens. I think he's got 13 appearances and 1 goal and 1 assist, which isn't exactly the greatest return on investment when you look at somebody that's had quite a bit of a Premiership experience from, say, the Arsenal and gone on loan to Leeds and etc. So he needs to kind of step it up a bit, especially when sort of like Sarr is now on the rise. He's been on form. He's got, I think, 3 goals in 2 games or 4 games, something like that. So he's probably looking over his shoulder going, okay, right, I don't want to be playing off the bench. I've got a decent price tag and I could actually get a nod at the England squad given half a chance. So he's going to have to step it up a bit because, well, he just hasn't really lived up to the hype at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a shame, really, because we had such high expectations for Nketia when he came in. We knew he could score goals and we knew what a threat he was, and actually thought he would suit our style of play really well, but he hasn't quite found his cutting edge yet. And yeah, like you said, Sarr is finding a great bit of form at the moment, and he's probably not a player we'd drop considering how well he's been playing. So I sort of think if Eze is fit, he'll start. But I imagine Nketia will play some role in this game, whether that's from the bench or starting. But yeah, at the moment, I can't see him upsetting Arsenal and coming back to haunt his former club in any way. You never know, though. Tonight might be the night he finally scores and fires us into the semi-final, perhaps. So we're going to take a quick ad break, and then after that, we're going to look at Arsenal and then do our score prediction. So stay with us. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Daily Palace podcast. We're looking ahead to the Arsenal game tonight, and I'm joined by my fellow Eagle in Dan Tanner. So we've had a look at some of the Palace team news. Could be a couple of tweaks for Glasner to make tonight at the Emirates. But Arsenal, looking back at their 2 EFL Cup games, they've fielded some quite strong teams. First team players like Declan Rice playing, Kai Havertz getting a run, Raheem Sterling, sort of team players who have started a lot or been in and around the first team. But they're sort of in a tricky period at the moment. They've drawn their last 2 Premier League games to Fulham and Everton and dropped points. So it's a bit of a strange one for Arteta because he might want to focus on the league. But do you think, Dan, that Arteta's going to continue to field a strong side for the Cup? Or do you think, given that Premier League form, he's got one eye on Saturday? What do you think?
I probably under the impression he's probably going to go for it because he's still trying to get a little bit of validation of being a top manager, as I think he's only got 3 cup wins at the moment, 1 being the FA Cup and 2 Community Shields. So he wants to try and get a couple more to be a little bit more respected, get a little bit more clout. And I think it's also the thing of the big teams are starting to take the Carabao Cup a bit more seriously than they did probably 6 or 7 years ago, when I think Liverpool did the entire tournament with their 3rd string team and got all the way to the final. And you've got the likes of Man City putting in their 4th string goalie and things like that. So I think the big teams are starting to take it seriously as kind of a backup in case they don't get Europe, as it's starting to get a little bit dicier for those European spots, with the likes of Villa, Brighton, and stuff started to knock on the door a little bit more, and the likes of Newcastle with their potential, with unlimited resources, they could be knocking on that door fairly quickly as well. So I would probably assume he's going to be going for it a lot more than, say, you probably would have thought. But it is also, on the other hand, as you said earlier, he is still going for the league. They still are looking to close a gap on Liverpool and keep City at bay as well. So we'll see what happens. It might be a slightly rotated team, but I still would expect a fairly strong one.
Yeah, they've got good depth anyway, but then they've also got a couple of youngsters who have played in the previous rounds. And and who have played in the Premier League as well recently. So although they might rotate, they've still got a very strong team that will give us a game, I'm sure. But yeah, do you think there'll be any players in particular that Palace need to be wary of? I think he's rested Saka in the previous 2 EFL Cup games, so he might not play tonight. But is there anyone else from the Arsenal team that you look at and you think, they could cause us a few problems tonight?
I would probably, if Saka's not going to be playing, because he would be the obvious first choice, their star player and things like that. But Odegaard, for me, would definitely be one to watch out for. He is starting to become that playmaking player that was touted when he was 16 at Real Madrid. So he's starting to get into his ascendancy. And Arsenal play very differently when he's not available. They are a lot more sort of defensive when he's not available, because they have to put on Declan Rice and Partey and things like that. So they don't have that creative mindset. Very much of the Ozil mould from a few years ago, where he just give him the ball and he'll just do what he wants. So he's probably the main threat. You've also got the likes of Martinelli if Saka's not playing, because being a Brazilian whiz kid, he's just going to he can just pop out from anywhere and just suddenly turn on the jets. You got Trossard can come off the bench and do some pretty decent damage as well. So they've got the weapons at their disposal. But if Odegaard isn't playing very well, I can see us at least being able to try and sort of keep the game in touch, really.
I think that's half the battle sometimes, is just not getting, because the players you just mentioned there's like 5 off the bat who are like, world-class players and would walk into most teams. And it is just a case of sometimes limiting that and then trying to get our own chances. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds on the pitch. If Odegaard plays and Rice plays, I think Rice has played the last 2 cup games and he is one of their central figures in midfield. If those 2 are playing in the centre, it's going to be quite a mammoth battle for like Will Hughes if he plays, and Lerma. Possibly Doucouré might get some minutes as well. So I think that midfield battle could be quite a good one to keep an eye on tonight. But like I said earlier, I fully expect us to be on the back foot and soaking up a lot of pressure from these guys. Like, even, you mentioned Leandro Trossard doesn't even start really in the Premier League for them, but he's such a threat. And if he is starting tonight, he'll be a player that could cause us real problems. They've also got Kai Havertz as well. I just want to get your thoughts on him, Dan. Like, he goes through these patches where he scores for like 6 games in a row and then just goes off the edge of a cliff. I think he scored last weekend. I know, in Arsenal's 3-0 win in the Premier League a couple of weeks ago over Nottingham Forest. But I'm not sure, I don't know, do you think he would be a threat if he starts for them tonight?
Oh, I always think of Kai Havertz as some kind of threat. I've got friends that are Arsenal fans that are been bemoaning him on and off for months and weeks now since they signed him from Chelsea. But I've been telling him he's been the absolute steal of that Chelsea fire sale. You've got a world-class centre-forward that can play and sort of give him the ball and he'll go and do something. He's got a decent header on him as well. You can play in multiple positions, centre-forward. You can move him back as a kind of attacking central midfielder and a very, very creative player in his own right. So he's always going to be a threat. He just has these moments where he just decides, I don't feel like showing up, or nobody's passing him the ball. So it's very he's one of these guys that has to play on confidence, which it's always a battle to keep these guys sort of going. So if he scores goals, he's going to be happy. If he's not scoring, he's going to just mope around and not really do anything.
Yeah, it's like most strikers, really. Like, you don't really notice them if they're not scoring. He's a bit different to Mateta, I think, as well. Mateta does contribute even when he's not scoring, just because his sheer presence and physicality. He's just a bit of a menace, which is great. But yeah, that could be good to watch tonight, the strikers and how they get on. We're going to take a quick break and then return to give our score predictions on tonight's game. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. Welcome back to part 3 of the Daily Palace podcast. Myself and Dan Tanner are looking ahead to tonight's clash at the Emirates against Arsenal. So we've had a bit of a preview of both teams and how we might shape up for tonight's game. We're just gonna finish by giving our score predictions, which could be quite interesting considering we're playing Arsenal again on Saturday. So if we get them wrong tonight, Dan, we get another. Well, you do in your crossover tomorrow. You get another bite of the cherry.
We get a do-over, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no jeopardy in this one. It's the one tomorrow maybe that you might have to reflect on to be a bit more accurate for Saturday. But yeah, how do you see this one unfolding tonight? Do you think Palace will get to our first semi-final since I think it was 2012 last time we got to the last EFL Cup semi-final? So do you see us progressing?
2012, man, it's making me feel old now.
yeah, we're fresh-faced we were back then.
Oh, God. I think we probably could nick it. We are the team on form at the moment. I think we're undefeated in 8. I think most of them are draws, but we are. And Arsenal are slightly struggling at the moment. All the memes on social media of them playing like Stoke, which is always funny. Getting them superimposed in old Stoke jerseys was great fun. So I think we might be able to sort of get a 2-1 at the moment, but it's very dependent on what Arsenal team shows up. If they've got their full strength, it's going to be basically a preview to what's going to happen on the weekend. Or if they've got a slightly less rotated one, because they're going to be thinking of Europe and the league, and we're also thinking about the league as well. So it's very dependent. I think we might be able to still nick it, though. It's going to be very much like the City game, I think. My prediction then, where it's just going to... We might be able to nick a through ball or sort of a point-blank range, something like that, when just sort of off the cuff, maybe even get a set-piece goal, as Hughes is now the next Iniesta. So we want him to keep doing that. So and at the very least, can Guehi score in the right end? The minimum requirement: Guehi not do another own goal, please. Yeah,
that's the set pieces could be crucial for both sides tonight, which is quite funny. I love the Stoke comparisons that are going around on social media.
They are so funny.
Yeah, just
showing them to all my mates, and they're just sort of like, no, put it away.
Oh, it's just so funny. Just Pulis rattled them, but that's a story for another day anyway. But I think because we've scored a couple from set pieces in the last 2 games, and obviously they're Arsenal. I think they've scored the most out of any Premier League team in the last year or so. They really are a threat, but that could be quite fun to see how that turns out. And yeah, Guehi with his own goals, hopefully he doesn't do that tonight, because against an Arsenal it could be disastrous. You know, he got away with it against Brighton and Newcastle, but if you do it at the Emirates at Arsenal, it's a different game, isn't it, really? But I can see this one, both teams scoring. I think it's going to go to extra time. You know, I'm going to say extra. I know they have extra time in this quarterfinals, or have they scrapped it?
I don't know. I'll have to double check that. I think they do run the semi-finals. I'm not sure about the quarterfinals.
Yeah, it might go
straight
to that. If it goes to penalties, I'm not backing us at all.
No way.
I can't remember the last time we had penalties, but I don't think we've got a good record.
No, penalties are just a complete and utter lottery. So
yeah, so maybe all right. Let's go. I'm going to go 2-1 Palace. Avoid the penalties, and hopefully we can get through into the semi-final. First time since 2012. Hopefully we get through. I'd love to see us go on a cup run. I think Glasner's already said he's going to put out the best team he's got available, or the team that he thinks can win tonight. So I think that will pay off for us. But like you said, it does depend on what Arsenal do. If they rest a few players, we could have a better chance. But I'm excited to see how this one turns out tonight. Right, that's been the Global Sports Podcast Network, Daily Palace, and I just want to say a big thank you to Dan Tanner for joining me today. Thanks, Dan. Right, sorry about that. If we had a slight technical difficulty there, but I'd just like to say another big thank you to Dan Tanner for joining me today. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah, no worries. Let's hope we don't have any more technical difficulties over the Christmas period, because that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, maybe we should ask for like better Wi-Fi in our stockings this Christmas. But yeah, we'll see. Right, thanks again. And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. It will help us massively. And you can catch Dan and the other guys later in the week with some more Palace chat ahead of our second game against Arsenal coming up on Saturday.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.